Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 77. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Tuesday. Steelers Nation usually don't do the Tuesday shows, but with the wildcard game taking place on Monday, Dave and I wanted to immediately recap and react to the Pittsburgh Steelers loss. Their season is over, 31-17 to the Buffalo Bills, digging themselves yet again another big hole they could not quite climb out of. Dave, how you doing? It's all over.
Not great, Bob. No, look, I mean, the finality of this always is, abrupt, if you will. I mean, you go from your season's going on to your season ending, and it seemed as though this season ended after the long Josh Allen run in that game, but to their credit, they did crawl back within 7 points of that game in the second half there. But look, I mean, only one team wins it all every year, and everybody else has their season come crashing to an end, abruptly, if you will. So, and that's exactly what happened to this team against the Bills. Not as adverse of conditions as I kind of thought they needed to play in order to have a better chance in this game. But if you do some of the things that the Steelers did in this game, it wouldn't have mattered if you would have played where you would have played. You're probably going to come away with a loss in this one. So we have a lot to talk about today, don't we?
We do. And you're right. Only one team can hoist the Lombardi, but Pittsburgh's playoff drought extends to 7 seasons without a playoff victory. And they've now lost their last 5 playoff games. That is tied for the second longest active streak in the NFL with the Washington Commanders. Only the Miami Dolphins at 6 have a longer streak. And so that cloud continues to hover over Pittsburgh, and it's a dark cloud, obviously, as their lack of playoff success continues. So, Dave, before we dive into this game, again, 31-17 loss to the Buffalo Bills, who will advance to the divisional round and play the Chiefs. Let's go over just some housekeeping here. Inactives, injuries. The inactives, I think you nailed all 7. Elijah Riley was that 7th man, the guy we weren't 100% sure of, but with Casey coming back, of course, we think if it's Patrick coming back, it made sense for Riley to sit.
Yeah, no surprise overall, but other than really just kind of questioning who was going to be that 7th, and I think we both agreed that Elijah Riley was the most likely candidate for that, and he was. The other 6, no surprise at all. And then just a kind of a side note to that, you go into the offseason with DeMarvin Leal. Can't get a helmet over Isaiah Loudermilk. If people have been scoring at home, that's not great, Bob. You got a former 3rd round draft pick there that can't even get a helmet. What was it, 4 of the 5 final games or something like that, that he was inactive there. So I think that's about all we need to talk about when it comes to the inactives there.
That's 2 not great Bobs in the first 3 minutes of the show. So for those playing Steelers Depot bingo, hopefully you had that in a sweet spot. Yeah, not a good sign whenever we're getting a couple of not great Bobs here so early in the show.
All we need is a gloom, despair, and agony on me, right?
That's the free space.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
For a playoff loss. All right, from an injury perspective, 3 of them suffered by Pittsburgh in this game. Joey Porter Jr., Allen Robinson, in concussion protocol. They both were hurt in the second half of this game and then ruled out. Tight end Pat Frymuth dinging his ankle at some point. I think he came back and he mostly finished out the game, but seems to be minor. But Tomlin mentioned him post game. But Porter, Robinson taking some hard shots to the head. Porter, especially from behind Connor McGovern, the Bills left guard, trying to push Stephon Diggs forward on a 3rd down play and just crushed Porter from the back of his helmet there, and Porter was in obvious pain. And then Robinson got super woozy after the back of his helmet hit the ground after being tackled. So obviously these guys now, have the whole offseason to recover. I'm sure that they will, but those were some, dicey moments. Hopefully those guys can recover pretty quickly.
Yeah, and what both happened in the second half there, kind of late. I think. When did the Porter one happen? About 9-minute mark or something of the third.
Something
trying to remember. But he played. What did I have his snaps at? Joey Porter played 73% of the snaps overall, 49 in total before he left the game injured there.
All right, Dave, let's get into the game. And frankly, if you've seen one recent Steelers playoff game, you've seen them all. It's the same story. I had my article this morning, Pittsburgh's insanity continues, and I defined that from just the same thing happening in terms of how these games end up. Pittsburgh falls behind. They start slow, dig themselves quite a hole, try to rally back. They fall short. Game's over. They lose. That can apply to this game, the Chiefs game. Well, they really didn't rally that much in the Chiefs game, but the Browns game, the Jaguars game, and maybe to some extent the Patriots game back in that AFC title game. But it just kind of rinse repeat at this point, Dave.
Yeah, look, you get the ball to start the game, and you actually get a first down there, and you move the ball up until almost midfield, and then your punter, man, that we could do a whole podcast about that. But your punter doesn't really pin. You put it best. If you what'd you put out on Twitter? If you need it inside the 20, it's going to be at the 20. If you don't need it inside the 20, it's going to be I forget how you.
I said if you need it at the 20, Harvard will put it at the 20. If you need it at the 10, Harvard will put it at the 20. And obviously he's got some shanks. What I say is, not all punts inside the 20 are created equal. The ones where you would love it inside the 10, inside the 5 to really pin teams back, Harvard always seems to put it at the 19, or the one, I think the first one was the 21-yard line. So, you're just not really taking full advantage of pinning teams deep.
All I will say is about the Steelers' first possession is at least it wasn't a 3 and out. At least you did move it to midfield in an area where you would hope that maybe you get a good punt, pin them within their own 10. But I'm not sure it would have mattered where you would have pinned them on that opening drive. The Bills came out, and once again, the weather wasn't as adverse as what I kind of was hoping it might be for this game. The field looking fantastic shape, really, to be honest with you. There was snow obviously in the stands, but that was it. And the wind didn't seem all that impactful. The Bills just marched right down the field. 10 plays, 80 yards, and then get down in the low red zone. The Steelers blow a coverage there on Dawson Knox, and a 9-yard touchdown there. Went into this game, obviously one of the keys that I had written about, and it was no secret. The Steelers have struggled against tight ends throughout the season here, and you wondered with them getting Minka and Casey back, how they would roll their defensive backs out in order to prevent maybe from happening. But lo and behold, they get drilled by a tight end right out of the chute. And not only that, it's a blown coverage, and you're down 7-0. I mean, at that point, I'm thinking, okay, well, they're going to need to adjust to that. Obviously, game wasn't over at that point, but your offense comes out, goes 3 and out again. You punt the football away. You fortunately get a 3 and out on the defensive side of football, and you start to thinking to yourself, right, maybe they're settling in a little bit here. And then first play of the Steelers, third possession, you have the completion to George Pickens, and he puts the football on the ground. Obviously, the play is reviewed. Bills football. One play later, they hit the tight end again, this time to Dalton Kincaid from 29 yards out, right down the pipe, man. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a 14-0 hole, and first quarter still hasn't ended.
Which is the story of so many of these playoff games. The Browns game, The Chiefs game, not after the first quarter, but, getting boat raced within a 10-minute span, if that, in the second quarter of that one. The Jaguars game, having to, the fans were digging out of the snow, and Pittsburgh was digging out of the hole that they made in this one. So, yeah, here was Pittsburgh's path to victory. They really had just kind of one clear path to victory in this game. Run the ball effectively, protect the football offensively, create takeaways defensively, at least 2 on Josh Allen was the magic number. And they did none of those things. And so you put those things together just off of that, you really have no chance to win this game. And Pittsburgh at least made it competitive at one point, despite all those limiting factors. But yeah, from an offensive standpoint, a simple sprint out supposed to be 5 yards to help substitute your run game when it's not working early, and Pickens puts the ball on the ground. And, all week, Mike Tomlin talked about this is a Bills defense that's aggressive. We talked about it, Dave. They force fumbles. Their secondary's got 7 forced fumbles this year. They got 14 as a team. They really try to take the football away at every opportunity. Pickens puts it on the ground. Freiermuth puts it on the ground. Luckily, somehow Pittsburgh was able to maintain possession. You get a goal line end zone interception, which is, is a killer in a 14-0 game. So you're just not going to win. Pittsburgh does not win when they turn the ball over, and they certainly do not win when they're, -2 in the turnover differential.
As bad as they got off to the start there, and obviously down 14-0, and you get into the second quarter there, you even get in a situation, as you mentioned, you had that deep pass down the left side to Freiermuth, and you get the looks. I think they made the right ruling on the Freiermuth play. Do you?
I'm still not entirely sure what they were even looking at. Were they saying that Freiermuth touched the ball out of bounds?
Right.
Okay. So it's like the Deontay Seattle situation where he's out of bounds but touching the football, and so it becomes a dead ball in that moment. Is that the interpretation?
That's the way I interpreted it there. I think it hit his helmet while he was out of bounds. I think that's what they determined there. All right. Besides that, okay, you get the and that was the Steelers' lone explosive play of the game. That play to Freiermuth there. But okay, fast forward from there. You continue on down. You start the second quarter. You still possess the football. You take a bad sack there on 1st and 10 at the Bills' 26-yard line. You're able to actually overcome that with a 3rd and 9 completion to Freiermuth over to the left side, and he truck sticks for the first down. You dig it deeper into the low red zone area there, and then a pretty brutal interception overall. Deontay never really looked open on that play, if you ask me, in the end zone there. And I thought Elam made a good job. Mason talked after the game. I got to put that where it's us or nobody. Well, if you put that where it's us or nobody, I'm not sure Deontay catches that on that one. All right. So you get the interception there, obviously a killer, down 14-0. But you want to talk about, I don't want to really call this a huge, it's hard to have a huge turning point in the game when you're down 14-0, I guess. But in a matter of like 3 minutes and 45 seconds, you go from throwing an interception down in the low red zone to Josh Allen taking off 52 yards down the field, to put the Bills up 21-0 there. And you're talking a matter of what, 10 plays, I think, overall. And once again, like 3 minutes, 45 seconds of actual game clock time in that situation there. And, it wasn't another captain obvious thing that I had in my 5 keys there, but what did I say? No joshing around on the ground. And that's a lot of joshing around on the ground. 52 yards, I think a career high, both playoffs and regular season for him. And then you turn around. I don't know how you can't be depressed at that point, because you go from potentially being 14-7 back in the ball game to 3:45 later down 21-0.
Sure. You can call that the swing. Talk about just how important that change was to maybe make it at least get points on the board, but hopefully put it in the end zone, make it 14-7. Okay, you're right back in this thing. You survived that first quarter wave, made up for your mistakes. Now it's 21-0, and now your game plan's wrecked. You're playing from behind, doing all the things you can't do against Josh Allen, against Buffalo. on the road in the postseason. So, yeah, Pittsburgh's inability to run the football really hurt them, especially early. And they had that 1st and goal run to Naji, and it got nothing. So they go empty set on 2nd and goal, try to spread things out. And, on a comeback in the red zone, I don't love the route. I mean, I think you got to try to design something where somebody's schemed up to get open down there in that real estate.
Rub them off, yeah,
something like that.
Rub them off, or you got to get something a little bit more open in that situation.
But Rudolph, it was not there. He shouldn't have thrown it. They're doubling Pickens and Freiermuth on that play in the slots. You're trying to take your 1v1 to your best route runner. I get the idea, but it's not there. And so, do anything else at 2nd and goal, live to fight another day. And Rudolph, I just thought Rudolph, he got better as the game went on. Thought he played, pretty well in the second half, but early on, he was not reading things well. I thought Buffalo was really doing a good job of disguising their coverages and rotating and dropping. There was I think maybe a 3rd down player, one throw to Deontay earlier in the game where Micah Hyde drops out, and it looks like Johnson's uncovered, has free access, but it's not there, and pass is incomplete. So I just thought Rudolph was struggling to make good decisions and really read Buffalo's defense well for the first quarter and a half.
Yeah, and probably a byproduct of why things got a little bit better for him moving forward too is when you're up 21-0, you can try to keep a lid on things a little bit better. And about that same time, I think you started to see the running game get a little bit better too. But at that point, at 21-0, you're just trying to prevent the home run, right? On defense. So that's probably why things loosened up a little bit overall. But look, 21-0 hole. I mean, not many teams come back from that, especially in the playoffs here. And you fast forward in the Steelers went 3 and out after the Bills went up 21-0. They were driving down the field again, and if not, the Steelers did eventually get the defense off the field and set up a 49-yard field goal in that situation. And you're thinking, oh boy, when it rains or when it snows, it really pours here. You're going to be down 24-0 here. And it was a mini light crack of daylight at that situation. Montravius Adams blocks the so much happened on that one play. Montravius Adams blocks it. The punter looks like me when I get out of bed with one of those old man cramps in the middle of the night there. Harbaugh gets on the football. You set up in plus territory at that point. To their credit, they went down and buried the drive there, and you're down, instead of being down 24 nothing entering halftime, you're down 21-7. So at the very least, it was a small positive, and tip your hat to the special teams, the Steelers special teams units in that situation. Once again, you go from looking like that's definitely the end of the ball game at 24-0 to going into halftime with at least some positive and thinking, hey, if we can come out and get a stop to open up the second half and get a touchdown here, it's a new ball game.
It was the swing that gave you some life in the way that, the swing from potentially 14-7 turned to 21-0, from potentially 24-0 to 21-7. That's a different complexion. Certainly has a different feel to it. So great job by Montravius Adams' team. But they blocked 3 punts. How many punts? 3 punts this year and a field goal. So I mean that's a pretty solid season from a production standpoint from your rush team on the punt unit and the field goal block team. So that was good. It was funny how far that ball bounced backwards too. I mean, Buffalo kicked that. Let me pull up the number here. Buffalo kicked that from Pittsburgh's 31, and then Pittsburgh took over at Buffalo's 33. So that ball was bouncing, and Herbig was trying to run it in, and he couldn't pick it up. But that was still certainly a huge swing. And then it was kudos to Rudolph and to Deontay and for the offense to punch that one in, because they couldn't settle for 3 in that situation. That was 4 down territory. That was, you got to put this ball in the end zone before halftime, and they did.
All right, you come out the second half. Obviously, Buffalo won the toss and deferred to the second half, so they got the ball first. And the Steelers got a sack with Alex Highsmith on a 2nd and 10 situation, and Knox, I think, dropped the opening pass of that of the second half to help the Steelers out there. They get off the field in 3-and-out situation, and you're kind of wondering at that point. All right, they got the 3-and-out to start the second half. Can they march football down the field and get a touchdown to make this thing start looking a little bit respectable? Well, they got the ball. They started to drive down. Had 2 false starts by, not a great game by Washington, was it? Darnell Washington, 2 false starts on that drive there. They still managed to overcome and not get into a 3rd down situation until later on in the drive, where they faced a 3rd and 9 situation there, and obviously couldn't convert, but at least they did come away with a field goal in that situation. So at that point, with 8:54 left in the 3rd quarter, and it's 21-10 at that point, and there's still time left at that point, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, to their credit, well, I'm hesitant. I know that's such an easy thing to say,
but
do we even give them credit for burying themselves and then just not laying down and then fighting back a little bit, but still losing? I mean, I'm it's so reflexive to say, well, to their credit, but how much credit do you get in the playoffs?
Right, to their credit for blowing it early.
Yeah. To their credit for screwing it up early and then having no choice but to rally really hard. So I'm going to do my best to not, because that phrase actually kind of drives me up a wall at this point, given their lack of success. But they did get back into the game. That's undeniable. I mean, they made it a 1-score game at some point, but then missed tackles, and Buffalo with the dagger. Shakir with a touchdown there on 2nd and 9. Minka missing the tackle, the tackling sloppy defensively. Didn't think the hustle was as good as it needed to be overall collectively as that group. And that's all she wrote on that final score.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to go back and think that with 10:32 left in the ball game in the 4th quarter, it was a 7-point game. 24-17, and if you
down 21-0,
if you get a stop there after scoring to draw it to 24-17, at that point, you don't know what can happen at that point. But I mean, you had that drive, a bad drive by Miles Jack at that point. Now, I do think that it was a bit of a cop-out. Originally they called pass interference on Miles Jack on a ball that ended up out of bounds, and it almost felt like we screwed up, but we're going to call that defensive holding in that situation. And correct me if I'm wrong, the ball was in the air. Why not make the right call in that situation and pick up a flag? But regardless, a few plays later, Josh Allen takes off with the football again, and a little bit ticky-tack, especially the way he kind of fake slid early in the game there. Josh Allen takes off with the football, tries to get as much yardage as he can, goes down, and Miles did his best to try to let up on that one, and it wasn't egregious, but you almost have to call that in that situation, I think, right? On the unnecessary rough. I mean, it was ticky-tack, but you can understand in the same breath why they called it in that one. But I mean, you go from a 2nd and 5, it would have been a 3rd and 3 situation, I think, at that point at the Steelers 35. And obviously you get 17 total yards on that play with the 15-yard penalty tacked on. And then they're inside the red zone, and the play to Shakir, and Minka can't bring him down, and
nobody else can either.
Michael Walker needs his ankles taped after that. And it was just after that. Obviously, I mean, some will say the game was over at 21-0, which for all intents and purposes it practically was, but it was really over at that point.
The best touchdown, or the best tackle on that Shakir touchdown, was Miles Jack leaping on Stephon Diggs' back. I saw the clip that you posted.
Yeah. He was
Not
tackling
sure.
somebody on that play.
Yeah.
He wasn't sure who, but he was tackling somebody.
Not the right guy, but somebody made a tackle on that play at least. Yeah, I mean, with Jack, I understand both sides of that one. I knew the call was coming the second that Jack collided with Josh Allen. It's bang, bang. You're trying to pull up. The dude just ripped off a 52-yard touchdown on you. He's Josh Allen. He's freaking the house. You don't know if he's going to go down or not. So I know you have to kind of play that more, intensely than if it's Mason Rudolph scrambling. But when you have that kind of hit in that moment, I knew the flag was coming, and you really can't debate that because that is to the letter, that is going to be a penalty.
On the long Josh Allen touchdown run, Eric Rowe, thoughts on was he held? Would it have mattered?
Was he?
Obviously, once Josh Allen got past that point, I mean, you have all those guys over there, and nobody can make the tackle on him.
That's my takeaway. I'm not going to focus on the penalty too much. Could you call it? Sure, but Casey's getting steamrolled. Everybody's slowing up. Josh Allen's outrunning your entire secondary.
Right.
Those, to me, are the bigger concerns than a potential holding call at the line of scrimmage.
All right.
And then, from there, the game was essentially over. Pittsburgh going forward on 4th down, about 5 minutes to go. George Pickens potentially held, pass interference, no call there. I understand his frustration. I thought Pittsburgh they went through their 2 money calls, and that final 3rd and 4th down, the 3rd and 3 to Warren that went for no gain, and the 4th down to Pickens, the 3rd down to Warren. Remember the long catch and run, the 50-yarder that Warren had against Cleveland in week 2, left sideline, he ended up getting fined on. Same call there, have the back kind of run through to the opposite side, and Klein did a heck of a job to track that, match that, and make the open field tackle on Jaylen Warren. And then on 4th down, they went 2-by-2, 12 personnel, twin wide receivers, the dragon concept that they hit the Pickens against the Bengals for 86 yards. They tried that on 3rd down against the Patriots with Trubisky that he threw to Pickens that was incomplete. So they have curls on the one side of the tight ends, slant flat to the other side. Again, questionable, no call there. But Pittsburgh went to their 2 money calls, like they're got to have it type calls, in Buffalo, from a result standpoint, defended them very well.
And Klein just came off the couch, right?
He talked about he's going to go to Key West, and now he's in Buffalo winning playoff games for them.
And this was already a Bills defense that had been banged up throughout the season, especially at the linebacker position, right, with them. And didn't Taron Johnson go out of this game at one? Did he come back? I don't remember if he came back or not. But they obviously lost. They didn't have one linebacker in this game due to injury, being inactive. They lost another one during the game there, and the Steelers still couldn't get really and obviously when you fall down 21-0, it gets you out of the game plan and all, but they never really got really solid, consistent running game going in this one. Was something that I think everyone would agree that they needed to run the football very, very well early and control the thing. And they just never could get that going with their running game. Be damned who was on the other side there.
On paper, the numbers don't look bad. 23 rushes, 106 yards. Warren had a good yards per carry. But for where Pittsburgh's been at, for where they needed to be, for where we thought they could be against a Buffalo team that was hurting down the middle and lost guys in game. Dodson did not play. Bernard gets hurt. They're going to rookies like Dorian Williams, for them being that 4-2-5 personality. Then Johnson, as you said, got hurt. I don't think he came back in this one. If he did, it came back very, very late. Pittsburgh just did not run enough, especially early. That's how they got themselves in that hole. They wanted to come out and run the ball, stay on schedule. They're putting themselves in 3rd and long when Buffalo can dial up their sim pressures and really rotate coverages and make life tough on the O-line, the protection, and Mason Rudolph. And so I just thought early on running the ball was just not where it needed to be, not where it has been.
If you're going to score 17 points in a game, which, I figured that they probably could in this game. If they scored much more than that, I thought maybe 20, something around in there. You damn sure can't give up what you gave up on the other side. And, they obviously gave up 21 before even halftime there. What is it with these playoff defenses and Mike Tomlin teams in these last 5 games, just giving up oodles of points there?
And I know you're facing at some point some really good offenses, some really good quarterbacks. I mean, 3 of their 5 losses have been to Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. I get that, but listen, it's AFC football. It's the playoffs. These great quarterbacks are not going anywhere. You're going to face Josh Allen or Mahomes or now CJ Stroud or Lamar Jackson or whoever the next guy is, Herbert, if the Chargers ever get their butt to the playoffs, those types of things. You're going to face good quarterbacks in the playoffs. That's why it's the postseason. And if Pittsburgh can't overcome that and mitigate that to some degree, then they're never going to go anywhere in the playoffs.
Yeah, they needed this to be a low-scoring game, I thought, with some elements involved in order to win. Other than the and it's obviously it was a key point in the game. The interception by Rudolph aside, I thought he played reasonably well outside of that.
He got better as the game went on. I agree. I don't think he was a reason why this team lost this game. He helped facilitate that comeback, but I thought he kind of took on the personality of the entire team. Struggle early, kind of figure it out second quarter, third quarter, but by that point it's too little too late. My takeaway, Dave, is just some of these numbers for Pittsburgh in the playoffs over these last 5 postseason losses are just abysmal. In the first quarter of Pittsburgh's last 5 playoff games, they have been outscored 66-0 in the first quarter of their last 5 playoff games. Just talk about uncompetitive football early, coming out as flat as you can. They've been outscored 122-47 in the first half of their last 5 playoff games. That's a minus 75 point differential. And they've been outscored in totality in all 5 of these games, 202-134. So just uncompetitive football, largely speaking, allowing a bunch of points. And again, they got back into this game, but this one played out like so many of their other playoff losses.
Yeah, you can almost rubber stamp it. And, obviously not having TJ Watt was a huge aspect of this game, but was it?
I mean, obviously it was, but I understand your point of, Pittsburgh still turns the ball over. They still can't run the football. It doesn't really matter if TJ Watt's out there or not. You can't do those things and expect to win.
Right. And they did get a couple of sacks in this game. Nick Herbig didn't play as much as what I maybe envisioned he might. He played 30% of snaps. Here's the thing. I think I counted like 8 snaps in the first half. And how many snaps did he play in total? He played 20. So, and obviously, when he's getting playing time, they're far, they trailed most of the game, obviously, after falling down 21-0 there. And when you're up like that, like Buffalo was, you're able to dictate kind of what you want to do. And, the same old story, can't cover tight ends. And even though those tight ends only combined to have, I don't want to say only, because they were very impactful. Let's see, Kincaid had 3 for 59 and a touchdown. Didn't he have a drop or 2 in there on top of it? Or was it, and Knox had 1 drop for sure, I think, to open up the second half. Knox had 1 catch for 9 yards and a touchdown. So I guess overall, those 2 combined for 4 catches for 68 yards, but 2 of those 4 catches were in the end zone.
Yeah, both in the first quarter. And according to the CBS broadcast, first time in playoff history, 2 tight ends have caught 1 touchdown in the first quarter. So Pittsburgh had allowed 9 touchdowns to tight ends this year, 8 of them coming from week 13, the Arizona Cardinals game, and on. So it's pretty, consolidated to a couple of weeks, 6 weeks or so of 8 touchdowns. Is just unacceptable. But obviously the injuries, played a factor in this one. My concern, and I don't know if I really mentioned it enough on Friday, but I tweeted it out before the game. Pittsburgh playing their zone defense, kind of just not complicated, spot dropping, cover 2, cover 3, bit of post safety rotation on the snap. But a high level quarterback like Josh Allen's going to pick that stuff apart, especially with the weather being largely good in this game and miscommunication issues. If you hear from Miles Jack, there was miscommunication on the touchdown to Kincaid that somebody, blew a coverage. He didn't say who it was on. So there was miscommunication on the first touchdown and apparently on the second touchdown too. And Pittsburgh, listen, you're not giving yourself any chance if you can't communicate and expect to defend Josh Allen.
On that second touchdown, was that quarter, half, or was that designed to be like a Tampa 2?
I have not gotten a good look at the all 22 view. Jack says there was miscommunication, so I assume it's not straight Tampa 2 where he's responsible.
He's running
for
the alley. Scene. I mean, he's running the seam though.
Jack?
Yeah.
But he's also trailing pretty significantly, which, I mean, he says there was miscommunication. I'll have to go back and check. I'm not entirely sure, what it was or what it was supposed to be.
Right. But, yeah. And look, the Bills had 4 explosive plays of 20 yards or more in this game. 2 of those landed in the end zone for touchdowns. One other, it would have been a longer explosive play if it didn't start on the 17-yard line, talking about the one to Shakir there. But 4 explosive plays, 2 in the end zone on touchdowns, and the Steelers only 1 explosive play in the game, and that was that big play late in the first quarter to Freiermuth that he fumbled, and they luckily maintained possession on. And when you're down like that, you're gonna have to have explosive plays as the game goes on to more than likely crawl back in it. But they never could get them.
So Buffalo, were they +5 in the talk stat? Is that where they landed? +5?
They had 4 explosive plays versus the Steelers 1. Obviously, you don't count block punt. I mean, do you count block field goals as a turnover? I mean, I guess you can.
It doesn't technically go down as a turnover. So I view 2 turnovers plus 4 explosive plays. That's 6. Pittsburgh had their 1 explosive play. That's +5, correct?
Right. You're not going to win.
No.
You're not going to win like that, even if you want to count the block field goal attempt as a turnover.
Again,
you're still down 4.
Turnover battle, 2-0 in Buffalo's favor. You could have shown me that stat alone. I could have not watched this game, just looked at that stat and just said, okay, Buffalo won. You just weren't going to win that game under those circumstances.
All right, and really, I mean, other than going through the finer details of the all 22 once it's released later today, I think, that's that.
Yeah, I just thought, again, defensively, tackling not good enough, rallying, swarming the football.
Horrific tackling.
Yeah. Especially in some key moments, for sure. The Allen touchdown, the Shaquille touchdown. The run defense was not as good as it needed to be. It wasn't terrible, but James Cook finding running lanes. They stayed on schedule. They ran the ball pretty effectively. So I just thought even some of those things he kind of expected Pittsburgh to be able to do defensively, okay, stop the run. They were mediocre there as well.
The Steelers started off, what were they, 0-3, I think, to start the game on 3rd down, and they finished 5 of 11 overall, so it got a little bit better. At least they did convert some 3rd and long. One of my keys was stay out of those 3rd and 7 type situations that we had talked about because they had problems converting those. They were able to actually convert a couple of longer 3rd downs in this game, but it was just a sidebar to everything that happened.
Yeah, they got put in some of those 3rd and longs early because they couldn't run the ball, and that allowed Buffalo to kind of tee off and win. From an offensive line standpoint, the protection, I guess it was okay. Rudolph was sacked once. Broderick Jones
that
getting
was miserable
beat inside.
On that one by Rousseau.
Yeah, I don't know if Jones has been beaten a lot to the inside the last month or so. I don't know if he was expecting help there because often on the center slide to the tackle, the guard's going to help out on the tackle, and the center's going to take the deep tackle 1v1. So I don't know if Jones was looking for help, but he's been beaten to the inside repeatedly over the last month.
Agreed.
He's got to go back to the left side. I'm not saying it's the cure-all, but he needs to be a left tackle next year just to at least eliminate the thought or the concern of, are we hurting him by not playing him in kind of his natural quote unquote position?
Sure. You're not going to get an argument out of me on that.
Beyond that, any other thoughts here with the offense individually? I mean, any bright spots? I thought Warren ran hard. I thought Deontay had a good game. They used him over the middle. I thought the scheme got better. They adjusted with more stacks and bunches and changing up alignments at Deontay. And there was a nice call on the Calvin Austin touchdown, because I thought Buffalo was pressing and really rerouting and throwing off the timing of these routes. And so to use stacks and bunches to kind of create some free releases was maybe a little too late, but an adjustment that was still made that proved a positive one for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think I think Deontay Johnson was probably your offensive player of the game. If you want to name a such, and Eric Rowe obviously made a lot of tackles on the defensive side of football, and it would have been nice if he would have had that middle of the field interception. When was that in the first half? There, I think
that was before the field goal block, though, wasn't it?
Okay,
I think. But yeah, I mean, he gave up that catch to Kincaid early. Minkah didn't seem to be on the tight ends too much.
I guess Minkah ended up leading the team in tackles with 10 over Rowe.
When he plays, Minkah leads the team in tackles. That's just what happens. But wish you would have had at least one more to not allow that touchdown there. But yeah, did Minkah get on the tight ends too much in this game? I don't know if he really was on Kincaid or Knox on some of those key weighty downs.
I didn't. I went through the TV tape just once last night, so I had to look and see what the all 22 says on that. Look, I mean, early they hit one over on the tight end on the over route, and that was Rowe on the tight end on that one. Yeah,
that was on with Kincaid on the bender. So little curious there. I know that I believe Fitzpatrick and Rowe were the starting safeties. Peterson did play some more traditional outside corner. I have not begun my charting yet. Hopefully I'll have that for Wednesday or at the latest Friday show. So I'll have some of the numbers on that. Seems like they had kind of a role for Casey to play as that third safety over slot and some packages. But again, I'll have to go back through the charting and my notes to kind of figure out exactly what Pittsburgh's plan was.
All right, we got plenty of time to dive into more of the X's and O's and specifics of the all 22 of this loss, but I think that's a good general overview of what happened there.
Which are you? I know you're disappointed. We all are. I'm kind of just numb at this point, going, "Yep, it's another loss, the same way they've lost all the other games," and this is kind of where I thought they would be when the season began.
Look, I think it's I know we had this conversation the other day. To me, it's not a successful season. You can carve this up and say, from where they were, especially after the back-to-back, or really the 3 losses in a row, but specifically the back-to-back losses to Arizona and New England, to think that this team would have got into the playoffs. From that point, especially after a third consecutive loss to the Colts, you would have thought, man, you would have bet a lot of money probably against that happening. I guess you could look at that as saying, well, they got into playoffs, and they ended up winning. Look, I had this team winning 11 games this year in preseason. You had them winning 10. You gave me a chance to backpedal. I don't know 4 games into the season, and I backpedaled 1 game to 10. So they got to where I think we both thought they would be in the win column. I didn't go anywhere. I mean, there's no way I would have predicted it to happen the way it all happened here. But and yeah, there were injuries, but every team's got injuries. My God, look at Buffalo on their defensive side of football, what all they went through this year. Every team has injuries. So I don't want, don't hand me that aspect of it there. And yeah, it sucked not to have defensive, your potential candidate or your candidate for defensive player of the year, TJ Watt, for this playoff game. The fact of the matter is, I was expecting this team to get in the playoffs and win a playoff game with a second-year quarterback who ended up not even playing a snap after he left. What week was that?
13.
After that. So I deemed this season as not successful, because I really expected at the start of the season for this team to get into the playoffs and win a playoff game. Alex?
I'll take my sad and small victory lap back in September before the year began. My prediction was 10-7, wild card, 1 and done. And that's what happened. Now, how it got to that point, who could have predicted that? I certainly did not. When they were 7-7, did I think they were going to go to the playoffs and even have a chance to be in the postseason? No, but they met my expectations in that sense, but it does not mean it's successful. And I'll just go back to the framing that I had on our previous show that, regardless of how you want to define the season success or not, Pittsburgh still can't get over the hump. This dark cloud of can't win in the playoffs, have not won in the playoffs since 2016. 26. I mean, it's been 7 years. We've talked about a Pittsburgh Steelers playoff victory. That is unacceptable for where this franchise is at, for how they're always in it in the regular season, and simply making it to the playoffs is only one small rung above. Never had a losing season. Okay, it's fine. It's nice, but what good does that get you ultimately? You're in this weird middle ground of they're never going to bottom out. They're never going to be a 3-win team like the Patriots where you hit that hard reset button and really blow things up. But are they ever going to truly compete in an AFC with these great quarterbacks who, again, are not going anywhere? And you got a good quarterback class upcoming in 2024 that may add to those names, a Drake May, a Caleb Williams, depending on where these guys go. I know Williams may go to Chicago, but we'll see how things play out. So the question becomes, more longer view, is how do you become a Super Bowl contender? What does that path look like? I don't know what it looks like right now.
It's got to, I tell you what, it's got to include a quarterback. You got to have somebody be a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, look at the Texans. They turn around when they get their franchise quarterback. There's a lot of other reasons too. It's not solely the quarterback, and DeMeco Ryans has done a fantastic job. But you go from Davis Mills to C.J. Stroud, your fortune change pretty dramatically.
Sure did. And well, we've seen quarterbacks come into the league and make noise early and then kind of fizzle out. I don't think Stroud's going to be in that group of fizzles out. And I mean, that kid really is playing well. And, to get where they are in this thing in the final four on the AFC side really speaks volumes. And they got some nice defensive pieces over there. And I think they got some draft picks in their pocket moving forward as well, too. They got a great young, head coach over there as well, too, in DeMeco Ryans. All right, post game.
Let me just mention one more thing here really quickly from the stats of the weird, stats of the sad. Over Pittsburgh's last 5 playoff games, they played 300 minutes of football, 6 games, 300 minutes. They have led collectively for 4 minutes and 56 seconds of that 300 minutes block. And that was the Chiefs game after the TJ Watt fumble recovery touchdown until the Chiefs tied it up. And then they, ran away with the game the rest of the time. So Pittsburgh has trailed throughout not led, I should say, tied or been behind entirely in 4 of their 5 games. And then we're ahead for barely not even 5 minutes in that Chiefs game. So you played 5 playoff games and essentially almost never held the lead. That's hard to do, Dave.
Yeah, very hard. Not acceptable. Yep.
All right. Post game, Mike Tomlin had his press conference. It was all going pretty status quo. Talked about turnovers being the issue, and it certainly was. And just disappointment of the season. And then I think that was what Bert had the usual any final questions, and there was one more question, but not one more answer. ESPN's Brooke Pryor starting to ask a question regarding Tomlin's contract, and mid-question, Tomlin walked off the podium. So big moment there. What do you make of it, Dave?
I make of it as he didn't want to be bothered with questions about his contract after bowing out of the playoffs in a wild card game. I think he was wanting to talk about the game only. Now, look, we and everybody else have talked about the speculation about what's going to happen with him. I understand the question being asked because of how much, even earlier in the day, didn't Adam Schefter regurgitate, I guess, one of his own reports or along the same lines that we've heard the last several weeks here. I understand why the question was asked. I don't think Tomlin wanted any part of it. At that point. So, I don't know if it's, to me, I'm not reading. I need more reason to read more into his decision just to walk off the podium like that. I just think he just said, man, I ain't got time to answer questions about my contract after just bowing out of the playoffs.
Right. I think you're right, but it's certainly going to add to the intrigue in the conversation around Tomlin and his future. Is that response him saying, this is dumb, I'm coming back, why am I even being asked about this? Or is it, I'm seriously contemplating this and I don't want to talk about this in this moment because we're hurting from the playoff loss? It could be interpreted one of 2 ways, probably more so, the latter, in terms of people wondering, okay, does this mean Tomlin may not come back? So I assume he'll be asked about it again whenever he speaks to the media next, probably next day or 2 for his year-end press conference. again, that question has to be asked at some point. Somebody has to kind of fall on that sword. So I get that, but I just think you have to kind of read the room for a second and be like, okay, they just lost another playoff game. The season's over. You can hold that question until the year-end presser and probably hopefully get a better answer or any answer from there. So that's going to be talked about, though, and it will continue to be discussed until Tomlin addresses it.
Could Tomlin have handled it better? So, look, we just lost a playoff game. I don't want to talk about anything other than this game, and then be done with it.
It would have, not made the media firestorm that it's now created.
Well, that clip's going to be shown over and over again for the next until he addresses again.
Right. So, I was like, had he answered with a non-answer and just said, I'm not talking about that, we wouldn't have this viral moment that Tomlin kind of created by storming off the podium.
Right. So his optics didn't help the situation. I understand, once again, and people will argue, well, why do you ask that? It was asked because there's been so much written and talked about the last, really since how long has this been going on?
Probably about 2 weeks of more kind of people, insiders really hinting at the idea, starting with Jay Glazer, and then I think Schefter, and then Florio, etc.
In my heart of hearts, I don't think that anything's going to happen there. But once again, you got guys like Glazer who it does make you wonder, and that's why the question was asked. Sure. I think he could have just said, "Look, I don't want to. I want to focus on what happened. Do you have it?" He could have even just said, "Do you have any questions about this game?"
Sure.
And then, any more questions? No, and then leave.
Right, but what Tomlin did, is going to create the optics. And do you think he'll ever address it when he speaks to the media next? Do you think he'll actually give an answer, or do you think he's going to just not talk about it publicly, and we'll either just find out with an extension or silence, or if he were to leave, then we'll find out when that news comes in?
I would think, does he ever like to talk about his contract ever, though? Period?
No, definitely not. But even just his future, addressing the reports of, are you contemplating, do you expect to coach the Steelers next year? That might be a question that he'll get asked. I wonder if he's going to address that, or if he'll continue to blow things off.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
I don't either.
I don't know which way it's going to go. It's obviously going to be talk until we find out whether or not he's staying or he's going, Yeah.
And if he doesn't address it publicly, then we'll just have to play the waiting game and kind of, as you said, we'll find out soon, because Senior Bowl's coming up
right around the corner here.
It may be a wait. I still think he comes back. Kim Hayward seemed to intimate that he thinks Tomlin will come back. He's not speaking for Tomlin, doesn't have anything on the record, quote unquote, but Hayward seems to believe it. The players talked about him glowingly. I don't think he's done, but I don't know. I don't know what's in his head, in his heart. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and once again, I roll back to, just Jay. I wonder how much Jay Glazer knows or doesn't know. That's the rest of the insider, quote unquote, insider reports. I give more credence to sort of the way, and Jay Glazer's found a way to say something about not saying something. You know what I'm saying? In that, but the fact that he sort of didn't come right out and say, look, Mike Tomlin's going to be back, but he did say it's Mike Tomlin's decision. So read into that what you will. If he ends up deciding he doesn't want to come back, then there was plenty of smoke around the fire there. If he does come back and gets an extension, then it's all about nothing.
I've been kind of sitting on the idea for the last, 12 hours or so. Probably going to write about it here soon, and hopefully I can explain this decently. But is Mike Tomlin just basically his mentor? Is Mike Tomlin Tony Dungy? Like, great men, great teachers, leaders, mediocre in the postseason, caught fire one year, won a Super Bowl, left earlier than maybe some people thought. They seem like the same guy, essentially.
Leader of men, not leader of football teams?
Well, no, I think he's a leader of the football team, but just in terms of Tony Dungy playoff record is 9-10.
A good leader of men, not a good head coach.
Not even that, but just from the playoff standpoint, like really good coaches. I think Tony Dungy's, everyone agreed, was a really good coach, but something in the playoffs where that success was always fleeting, despite having talent and a franchise quarterback in Peyton Manning for many years, and Tomlin having been. Dungy had problems with the Patriots, and of course Pittsburgh's had problem with the Patriots. I just see a lot of comparisons between the two. And I'm not saying that's even a negative thing. Dungy's in the Hall of Fame. He's got a ring.
Well, look at a guy like Marv Levy. You know, what's the tag on Marv Levy after
never
all
won a
these
Super
years?
Bowl. Yeah,
Right.
Never won a Super Bowl. They lost, 4 of them. But I mean, Tomlin has the ring, so that's not going to follow him. But I mean, just in the sense of, they seem like they're the same guy. And again, Tomlin's mentor in the NFL was Tony Dungy, defensive guy, young head coaches when they were hired. Tomlin was 35, 33 when he got hired. Dungy was 41 when the Bucs hired him. These are good head coaches, good people, but just they're not going to be thought of as the Andy Reids, the Bill Belichick, that like true upper echelon coaches in the NFL.
I mean, look, making it to the playoffs as much as this team has under Tomlin is something, but it's not enough, especially when you bow out 5 times in a row in the first round.
Yeah, I had the stat too that Mike Tomlin is now the 13th coach in NFL history with double-digit postseason losses. He's now 8-10. Now, of that group, the only 2 coaches who have a worse winning percentage than Tomlin are Chuck Knox and Marty Schottenheimer. And I believe Tomlin was a big Schottenheimer guy because he grew up around Schottenheimer in Washington. Or am I getting him confused with Joe Gibbs? I might be getting myself confused with that. But point is, Tomlin's postseason record has continued to stumble.
I mean, we'll obviously see what happens with Harbaugh and the Ravens this year. But I mean, how many championships does Harbaugh have? And I'm not trying to. I'm just throwing out that only one team every year can win the Super Bowl, right?
Sure, it's hard, and to expect a Super Bowl or even a run every year for Pittsburgh and really most teams is unreasonable. But the lack of playoff success continues to be an anchor because you've lost 5 straight. You've lost them in similar fashion. You've been upset. You've given up a bunch of points, turned the ball over, come out flat. That weighs on you, and the longer it continues, it's going to weigh more and more.
Right.
So I mean,
look at guys like, once again, like Pete Carroll and John Harbaugh, and obviously we'll see how Harbaugh's season weigh out. I mean, can you be a good football coach, or can you be a great football coach and only have one Super Bowl championship? Can both be the same? I mean,
sure.
Can both be equal?
I think you can be a great football coach and quote unquote only have one ring. I mean, only so many coaches have a ring, at all. I just had the thought that I think Tomlin is this era's Tony Dungy, and you can take that for whatever it is. It's certainly not a pure negative, but I think Dungy had some limitations in that lack of playoff success, and Tomlin is really been walking the same path. And again, I mean, it kind of makes sense because Tomlin learned a lot about football from Tony Dungy.
Yeah, and when Tomlin did win his championship, everybody will continue to tag on. Well, he did it with Cowher's players. That'll always be until he gets another one, or if he never gets another one, that'll always be a tag that some will use against Mike Tomlin.
Sure, they will. I don't buy it. I don't think it's really
I don't buy it either,
argument.
but it's going to continue.
But even if he wins another one, someone will have an excuse for some reason about whatever, some, Mickey Mouse schedule, or this guy got hurt, or they avoided this team. There's always going to be people always try to put a caveat in there. Sure. I'm not going to take away the Super Bowl. I know that you're not either. But again, point is, you're 8-10 in the playoffs. You've lost your last 5. This continues to be a problem for Pittsburgh, and that's why the never had a losing season line to me. I've always loathed that because you're defined in Pittsburgh by your postseason success. And again, I understand you're not going to win the Super Bowl every single year, but losing 5 straight playoff games and the way that they've lost those games especially is unacceptable.
All right, well, I'll roll it back to this season specifically and what I said at the start of the season. I thought for this season to be successful, the team needed to get in the playoffs and win a playoff game, and that did not happen.
Fair. I understand that point. Naji Harris post-game with some interesting comments too, and I really don't know how to best interpret them. He made it clear he was not calling out the coaches, and yet he said they needed stronger and better in-house rules, more discipline, more commitment. He says, quote, not changes in our coaches, the rules that are in our building. We got to be more disciplined. We got to be more committed. I'm not saying that we're not, although it sounds like he is saying they're not. But just coming from a place that has structure, coming and just seeing, we could probably get help in these areas. It might change something. I assume he's referring to his time in Alabama when he talks about coming from a place that has structure. Again, Harris says he's not calling out the coaches, but hearing these comments, I don't know how that can't be, to some degree, at least a reflection of the coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a couple of times during the season, some of his comments that he's made, when tacked on to, I think he feels that some maybe problem children are getting treated a little bit differently and shouldn't be.
It seems like it. I assume that goes back to some of the George Pickens related stuff, and who knows what else is going on behind the scenes, but that, again, Tomlin's philosophy has always been, I'm going to treat you fairly, but not equally.
Right. And maybe that's rubbing on Naji.
I think so, potentially. And then I think Nick Saban kind of seems like, I'm going to treat you guys all equally kind of deal. College is more rigid, more structured, just by its nature. It's younger guys. Your time is blocked out more. Tomlin's kind of known for having these guys to have freedom to come and go, and their personalities shine through and all those things. So, again, I'm not entirely sure what changes Harris wants to see, if it's a player leadership or just more structure overall. I can't quite tell, but obviously he's not happy with the overall culture and how the structure of this team is built.
I heard a little snippet of Broderick Jones being asked about Mike Tomlin, saying, how he's a different coach. He doesn't really yell at you. And I wonder if Naji would want more of a coach and not a guidance counselor. You know what I'm saying? Or not a leader of I think Mike Tomlin wants more. I mean, Naji Harris would like more of a coach, what he came, similar to what he came from with Saban.
Yeah, more of a drill sergeant, like hardliner kind of coach. It sounds like. I thought even more, or just as interesting, was something Harris also said. Quote, I have my opinions on things, but I'm just a player. But if you want to elevate where we're at, there's some in-house things that need to change. Coach T always tells me just to play running back. That's a little inside thing that we have. I went on to say, but that's not my place. That's not anything I can control. What do you think he means when he says, Coach T always tells me just to play running back?
I don't know. Maybe Naji's got 3 suggestions of the week in the suggestion box.
Because when Harris came in, Tomlin seemed to really put him in a fast track to a leadership role. Like, he was a captain his sophomore year, not a captain this year, whatever that's worth. Did Harris maybe take that as a slight to not be named team captain? That's voted on by the players. It's not anything to do with the coaches. But it seemed like, Harris was being put in a leadership role, and Harris' comments now seem to indicate, well, I'm just one guy. I'm not really a leader. I'm not viewed as the leader, at least. And so I don't have really the control to change these things. If he doesn't have the control, and if Harris is not blaming the coaches here, then who does he think has the control to change these things?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Interesting commentary. I really can't quite figure out.
And it's hard to add context to just a small snippet too, from one interview. But when you do stack it up with previous things said by Naji throughout the season and all like that, it just sounds like, I think if you dive deeper into it, he would like to see more structure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the overall takeaway.
That's the root of it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Cam Hayward speaking after the game as well. Unsure about his future. His body's hurting. He talked about all the crap he went through, the groin injury.
And we knew he was hurting. We knew he was hurting during the year, the way he's running too. And he didn't want to. When he asked specifically, like, what percentage were you and all like that, he came close to maybe trying to answer that. But I mean, look, he was overcompensating. I think in so many words, he said that during the press conference, and it was a rough year from him, trying to hurry back from that injury and probably overcompensated. And he, no player's 100% during the season, but he was obviously far from it and did everything he can. And look, the older you get, tougher that is on that. But he wasn't the player that he wanted to be this season, and I think it all stemmed from that week one groin injury that he had.
No doubt. I'm sure his most challenging year. I mean, he's gotten hurt before, but he's never had to come back mid-season from a serious injury. When he tore, was it his bicep or his tricep? I always forget what it was.
Yeah, it was up high, whatever it was. But he couldn't run, man. Mm-hmm. He couldn't run.
Right. My point is, though, when he got hurt back then, he was done for the year. He didn't have to come back from that. He just got ready for the offseason and got ready for the next year, trying to come back mid-season from an injury and catch that moving train. And you're not 100% when you come back, but you're fighting hard to get back as soon as you can. As soon as you can possibly be cleared, that's difficult. And as he said, he kind of leaned on the healthy groin, and then he got probably hurt that at some point too. And that's common with injury. Somebody hurts a leg, they kind of lean on their other leg more and actually do more harm than good. So Hayward did not commit to coming back, but based on his commentary, the things he talked about, the way he talked about it, I'm pretty confident Hayward will return. He will not retire after the season.
Trying to read in between the lines of everything that he had said last night. I think he wants to return. I think he will return. Now, how the contract gets handled, that's another aspect. Even if they do ask him to take a pay cut, I only envision it being at most 5. I envision it being along the lines of that Ben Roethlisberger pay cut several years ago. It's not going to be significant. If it does, I mean, there are other avenues. You can give him a Troy Heath Miller extension if you wanted to, just to kind of move the money around from a cap standpoint, where he technically doesn't lose any money at all. But everybody's it's an understood that 2024 is probably going to be it for him. I'll put it to you this way. This team, at least from where they sit right now, really can't withstand Cam Hayward not coming back, to be quite honest with you. If Cam Hayward does not play for this team, at least where we sit right now, that leaves you with Larry Ogunjobi, Keanu Benton, Isaiah Loudermilk, and DeMarvin Leal as your only 4 players under contract. Now, yes, you would have the freed up money to go out and do other things with. And look, regardless of what happens with Cameron Hayward, this team needs to draft another defensive lineman. Keanu Benton's a fine young player. You wonder how much Larry Ogunjobi has left in the tank for one more season. But I tell you what, if Cameron Hayward does not come back, you're to me, you have to be all in on Larry Ogunjobi. At that point. So I think when you start looking at the big picture and then piecing it together, what Cameron Hayward did and did not say, I think he's going to be back in 2024.
He was referencing things like training camp and next year. And when he talked about those things, that tells me you're going to come back. And to your point, how with the contract, I don't know if they're really going to do a pay cut with Hayward. I mean,
I don't either. I don't either.
They're going to have to restructure this deal. They may actually, I know they're against it, but the avoidable years, or even it's just kind of an extension that's kind of a faux extension that they know that it's not going to be seen through.
Like they did with Heath Miller and Troy Polamalu. You add 2 years onto it. You move the money. Like they did with Mitch Trubisky, to be quite honest with you.
True. And then we're probably looking at 2024 being his final season for Cam Hayward.
Yeah, I struggle with thinking that 2024 wouldn't be his last season.
Yeah, I'm not going to guarantee it. Who knows? Maybe he's healthy next year, has a great season. I mean, he could play if he wants to. But that's my view of things right now. And I feel for the guy. 1 career playoff win. He spoke about how this keeps him up late at night. That not winning a Super Bowl, watching others before him have the ring and have that part of their legacy. I think Hayward is a guy that really cares about his legacy and having that story. And you're always going to have that missing piece without having a Super Bowl. And he's never really even gotten that close to getting there. The year they went to the title game, he was hurt that year in 16. I mean, the guys, got into the divisional round, I think, in 15. And that's as far as he's gotten in games where he's been active and available. But it's depressing.
Yeah, it is. Boy, I don't think this is going to be the year he wins the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, but you want to talk about him being super depressed if he doesn't with everything. And look, it's not all about postseason awards, but he obviously doesn't have a playoff win. He's obviously campaigned quite a few seasons in a row for this Walter Payton Man of the Year award. I think he really would like to have that attached to his legacy.
Oh yeah, I know it would mean the world to him, and he's really, worked hard. He deserves it, but only one guy can win it. Only one guy, only one team can win a Lombardi. Only one team can win that, or one player can win that Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And we'll see if Hayward can do it this year, because the Lombardi's not going to happen. Any other thoughts here, post-game comments that caught your attention, Dave?
Mason Rudolph doesn't know what's going to happen with him, and it's understandable. And for a loss after 3 consecutive wins, once again, I thought overall I don't think he damaged his free agent market value severely in this loss to the Bills. Now, with all that said, I still think his market value, it's definitely improved. How could it not? But I think it's still going to be muted overall.
What does that look like? 5 million, 3 million, 10 million?
Probably a little bit more than maybe a Mitch Trubisky deal, the $7-8 million range. I don't think it's going to, there'll probably be these reports come out like they were with Mitch Trubisky after Mitch played 33 snaps with the Buffalo Bills, people thinking he was going to get 20 million or whatever those ridiculous reports are. There's still a lot of questions about him. He's obviously not a mobile quarterback. He's more pocket quarterback. He did do some good things overall. That said, he didn't exactly light it up on top of it. So I think you're looking more, if I had to guess, around, I don't know, $6 to $9 million, maybe 10 million being the ceiling, and even that feels like a little bit of a stretch in my opinion. But there's markets for quarterbacks out there, right? Especially ones that can push the football down the field and win games. I don't think it's going to. I'd be surprised if it's any more than 10 million. But to me, it feels like that $7 to $8 million range, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, and then the question is, does Pittsburgh have an open quarterback competition? Do they say Pickett's their guy? Do they explore other options? We're going to talk about that the entire offseason, or at least through the draft. I know that. But that conversation begins, and I think you made the point. I think Ryan Clark made the point last night. We've talked about it endlessly, Dave. If you don't have that quarterback that can compete against these AFC names that we mentioned, and again, those guys are not going anywhere. Half of them were hurt this year. They're going to be back healthy next year. Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, Herbert played through a bunch of crap this year, et cetera. To make an actual run when you have a mid-tier at best quarterback versus some of these top end names, it's a hard road to walk, Dave.
Well, let's pivot here. And what are the biggest questions about this team heading into the early part of the offseason here? Number one, what's going to happen with Mike Tomlin? Right?
Okay. Yep. To start there. First question.
Number two, what is the future of the quarterback position? Your former first round draft pick remain number one on the depth chart, but not number one on the field. The number one became the number two. The number two became the number three. The number three essentially became the number one.
It's a tough episode of Sesame Street with the numbers. I'm trying to keep up.
Right. And as far as Mike Tomlin would have you believe, the number one is still the number one, even though the number three was the number one. And the number two is the number three, and there's no question about it.
And likely to be deleted.
That's your math. That's your math. I was told there'd be no math today.
Math.
But look, there's no way you can bring Mitch Trubisky back at that number. I mean, if Mitch Trubisky comes back, is retained and makes it past, he's not going to make it. I don't see how he can make it past his March roster bonus. To be quite honest with you, I don't think he wants to at this point probably be back at that. So there's one out of the picture. Mason's a free agent unless you give him the deal. Blow his doors off. There's no reason for Mason to sign before free agency starts.
And he wants to compete. If you tell him you're the clear backup, why sign up for that again?
Right. And if you give him enough money where he's not the clear backup, he can't be the clear backup. So, right. And then that leaves you with Kenny Pickett. And I keep rolling back in my head, Mike Tomlin talking about football justice. I wonder how far Mike Tomlin has come from football justice when describing Kenny Pickett at this point. But they went out of their way to keep Kenny Pickett as the number one quarterback on the depth chart. It's going to be real telling, I think, out of the chute, or maybe not telling, at least when we get to pro days. And look, Mike Tomlin might not even be part of it for all we know. Where do they show up at the pro days? Because obviously, if you think that you need another quarterback, especially via the draft, you're going to show up at those pro days. Now, this team could pivot and go the free agent route.
Sure.
Obviously, it's going to be endless talk about probably three in particular, right? Justin Fields, what's going to happen with him and the Bears? Russell Wilson, what's going to happen with him? And potentially a Kirk Cousins. Those are probably going to be the three that we're writing and talking about every 5.5 days.
I wish it was going to be shorter than that, probably, but yeah, point taken. My sense.
Those are your two biggest questions, and then I think a third would be what's going to happen with Cameron Hayward.
I think third is who's your OC. If you're going to stick with your quarterback, sure. That's going to be such a critical hire for this offense, for this franchise. My sense is, and that's based on some of the reportings, that they're going to stick with Pickett for 2024, especially and assuming if Tomlin returns. If Tomlin walks, then your head coach didn't draft you, your GM didn't draft you, all bets are off. But assuming Tomlin stays, I think Pickett's going to be the guy. Is that the right decision? It's very debatable. I mean, I know we're going to have months to talk about this, but to put the question front and center, do the Steelers have a long-term option, a quarterback on their roster right now, somebody that can compete toe to toe with these top AFC quarterback names?
Based on what we've seen to this point with Kenny Pickett, the answer is no.
Then it's like, what are we even talking about here? If they don't have that guy, then you got to go find that guy. And will they do that? I'm skeptical at best.
I'm skeptical at best that they will do something about it.
My thought, as we see there today, is that Kenny Pickett will be the 2024 Week 1 starter, and they'll give him one more chance to show he can be the guy with a new OC.
Yep, and if that's my thought as well too. And if you don't bring back Mason Rudolph, who's going to be your turn two guy?
Some other veteran quarterback that is not on the roster right now. That's my thought. Could that change? Certainly. Is that the right decision? I'd argue it's not, but that's where I think they're headed.
If you're gonna, and look, the goal isn't now to be, well, let's get Kenny Pickett and sneak into the playoffs and get past this, win one playoff game. You got, if you're gonna, you look, name off the quarterbacks that are left in this league right now in the playoffs. Name them off.
AFC, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, and Josh Allen.
All right, CJ Stroud, obviously a young kid, but he looks like he certainly could be one that we're talking about for years to come. But three out of the four are definitely established guys,
and they're all first-round picks.
All right. What's on the other side?
Let's see. Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, and Jordan Love.
Okay.
So you have 3 of the 4 first-round quarterbacks, and then Purdy being the 7th rounder.
Right.
But obviously, we're looking at emerging or more established. Well, Baker's kind of a weird one, but the others.
Hey, props to him. Props to him, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Florida does wonders for the soul, doesn't it?
I guess so. And I mean,
they should be using Baker Mayfield as the Chamber of Commerce. Come to Florida.
But the collapse of the Eagles too is just as remarkable. And Kelsey's retired, and the questions about Hurts and Sirianni. Talk about a fall. Not a good weekend for PA teams, that's for sure.
Right. But I mean, back to the point here. Look at the quarterbacks in the final 8 here.
Well, the NFC gets a little bit more muddied because you have Goff, which is a good quarterback, but is he an upper elite guy? Probably not. Baker. But AFC, these four, Mahomes not going anywhere, Allen's not going anywhere, Stroud's not going anywhere, Jackson's not going anywhere. You throw Burrow, you throw maybe Watson, Herbert. Who am I missing? Rodgers will play next year. I know he's only got a year or two left, but he'll play. You get the point. You got a high concentration of great quarterbacks reside in the AFC, and a lot of them in the AFC North.
Look, if we talk about the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat and all like that. I mean, there is a threshold that a guy like Kenny Pickett needs to be at. Plain and simple. And you have to wonder if he can get to that point. You can only smoke and mirror it enough to get in, but what are you going to do once you get in?
You've seen the results of what's been happening.
The only reason the Steelers got in is because Mason, the adjusted net yards number technically that he put up in those final 3 games.
Sure, I get that. I mean, the question comes back to what is the vision for this team to become a true contender? I know it's not going to happen every single year, but what is the vision to even get there? And I just struggle to see it right now.
It feels like a continued land of mediocrity until they find. And look, I haven't seen it yet. Maybe you look at a guy like Jordan Love, right? But Jordan Love didn't even have the amount of starts. But when Kenny Pickett faced Jordan Love, how many starts did each of those guys have?
Well, I think Pickett had more.
Right.
This is Love's first year starting.
All right, and what do we talk about quarterbacks? Good 20 starts. Now, to Jordan Love's credit, now it'd be interesting to see how this plays out the rest of the game. And we talked about this the other day, man. After the game against the Steelers, that guy started turning it on.
Yeah, I mean, he
figured it out.
Franchise guy. Yeah, the light came on for him. So, kudos to him. I think that they have. It's dangerous to say these things can change, but sure. I think they have their guy.
Yeah, and you look at where Kenny Pickett's. How many more games now do we need to? How many more games do they need to give him to see if that light will come on for him? If you're going to stick with him, you can't stick with. You got to go get another coordinator and system or whatnot. Plain and simple, right?
I mean they're going to. They're going to hire a new. I mean, unless you're implying they're not going to go internal. That's just your caveat that they're not going to just promote.
I don't see how you got to go. You got to if Art Rooney gives one directive and one directive only, it should be you guys got to do something with the OC and the system here.
I agree. I think whenever Tomlin speaks to the media for his year-end press conference, he'll be asked a bunch of questions. We'll write about it. We'll talk about it. The only two that really matter are you coaching next year and what's your quarterback plan? Those are the only two I'm really interested in him giving an answer to.
And what's the OC plan on top as a sidebar to that?
Right. But I mean, the OC plan is we'll interview, I know what the answer to that's going to be. We'll vet and we'll figure it out. We'll let you know. The hire is critical, but the answer to the question, I know what that's going to be. But are you coaching? What's your quarterback plan? From an answer standpoint, I'm dying to know what those answers are.
And aren't these the worst 3 questions to have about a franchise?
Yes.
Right now, who's your coach? Who's your quarterback? What's your offense going to look like?
Yeah. I mean, those are the nuts and bolts of your franchise. And those are all at least questions right now.
Right.
So things are going well here on this Tuesday.
I mean, you go from coming out of the preseason to wondering, okay, can they get to the point where they get in the playoffs with a second-year quarterback, win a playoff game, and then you feel pretty comfortable about a Super Bowl window opening up. That you are not right at. If anything, that looks miles away right now.
It looks good on the brochure, and then you actually get to the timeshare resort, and you're like, this is actually not what we thought it was going to be. Are we stuck here 20 years in this thing? Or can we get out of this thing? Pittsburgh's in a timeshare right now. They're just in this like mediocre kind of expensive product. Can't really leave. Kind of just stuck. You're trying to pass it off to somebody. That's how I feel about the Steelers right now. They're in a crappy Disney timeshare.
And if you get a new head coach to come in at this point, let's say for whatever reason Tomlin's gone, and with Omar Khan technically being able to distance himself from the Pickett pick if he wanted to, if that's the direction this thing went, then you have to go all in on a draft with a quarterback, or you have to go all in on a quarterback via free agency.
Yeah, I mean, again, my thought is at some point this year or next they're going to draft a quarterback high.
Not this year. I don't.
Yeah,
think.
Probably. I don't think this year, but if not this year, then soon. At some point, 2024 at the latest is your time to figure out Kenny Pickett, and if he's not the answer, then you got to move on.
Right. I mean, without a doubt, if they stick with Kenny Pickett, he's going to have to make monumental improvement in 2024.
All right, Dave. Any other thoughts? I know we'll have a lot of time to kind of ruminate on these thoughts and the big questions about this team, and we'll go from there.
All right, this team, as it stands right now, will pick 20th overall in right there in where people don't want to see them picking, probably. And obviously there's a chance they could trade up, trade down, blah blah blah. But 20th overall is where they sit right now in the draft. And when you why don't you roll through the names, or I can, of the at least the unrestricted guys.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more tomorrow. Let me just pull up the list here if I can actually find it. Again, it's not headlined by any one massive name. Mason Rudolph has really become like your most notable free agent to be in terms of what's going to happen with him. Also, Levi Wallace, Armon Watts, Blake Martinez, Jandon Sullivan, Elijah Riley, James Pierre, Quan Alexander, Marcus Golden, Miles Boykin, Miles Killebrew, Montravius Adams, Michael Walker, and those are your unrestricted free agents.
All right. You'd like to have Miles Killebrew back for special teams if you could get something done there. And really the, Marcus Golden, if the price is right, you'd probably like to have him back, but he is a little bit older, so you have to be careful with the price there. And then what's going to happen with Mason Rudolph? Those are the guys that really stick out. The rest of them, as is usually the case every year, are, well, if they want to come back on and compete for spots on minimum salary deals, have at it. If not, no big loss. But the big names, or I won't say big names, but the notable names, I guess, would be Miles Killebrew, Marcus Golden, poor Quan Alexander. I mean, if you could get him to come back on a minimal deal just to compete, fine. If not, to me, not a big loss there. But I think once again, it's Miles Killebrew. Mason Rudolph's going to be a name to watch, and potentially a guy like Marcus Golden.
Yeah, Alexander might be a post-draft spring thing. See where his recovery's at. You have 2 torn Achilles in your career. You're around 30. That's hard to come back from. But yeah, no one breaking the bank. I mean, in terms of contractually, your biggest offseason decisions are your 5th-year option on Naji Harris,
right,
and maybe an extension for Pat Freiermuth, but that may not even come until the summer, for all we know.
Right. Those are other kind of questions once you get past the major questions that we pointed out. Should point out that Miles Jack and Eric Rowe will technically end the season on the practice squad. So those contracts will terminate here soon. If you could get those guys to come back on minimum value deals with no guarantees, fine. If not, fine. That's my opinion of it. I mean, I'd like to see Eric Rowe back competing for a spot, be quite honest with you. But it's not end of the world type decisions, I don't think, with either one of those two.
Yeah, I'd like to bring Rowe back. Jack, he can walk. I appreciate him coming off the couch. Good guy. But this was really, they needed somebody that knew the system, that was a vet. This was not like we love your talent kind of situation. So I think he can go back to flying planes and running this hockey team. But yeah, I'd like to see Rowe come back, I guess, on a minimum type deal.
All right. Shall we get to the email machine?
Yeah, I should just note quickly, didn't mention this in a previous show. 2 All-Pros this year for Pittsburgh. Miles Killebrew, congrats to him, his first time, well-deserved. And TJ Watt, now his 4th All-Pro. And expected, but that's the selection. And just based off the voting, I'm going to guess Myles Garrett will win Defensive Player of the Year. He had more first-place votes, more total points from the All-Pro voting than TJ Watt. And there's generally a pretty strong correlation because it's the same block of voters. It's the DPO. Y is the AP award, so it's the same voters. And if they vote Garrett ahead of Watt from the All-Pro standpoint, they're almost certainly going to vote ahead of Watt for the Defensive Player of the Year award.
You would think that's going to end up being the case if you're handicapping this.
Yes. So get ready for that. We'll know in about, 3 weeks, NFL honors about that award. Right. But buckle up. Probably going to be Myles Garrett.
Okay.
All right, Dave. Reader emails, close out today's show. I almost forgot to say my line.
All right. Todd Bays writes in, offense not good enough. Just a quick recap on numbers of points per game for playoff winners. He has 21 to 22 season, 29.3 points, 22 to 23 season, 28.6 points, 2022 to 2023 season, I guess playoffs so far. I guess he meant that to be 23-24, 6 games so far, 34 points per game. Steelers last 3 seasons, 20.2, 18.1, 17.9. So when compared to what it takes to win in the playoffs, they are 10 plus points behind the average. Tomlin, if he is back in the front office, needs to address this trend by bringing in more competent offensive staff to get more out of the players. As you can't turn over the entire roster in one season. Appreciate all you do. Look, point taken. Hate to have to quote Matt Canada here. Need to score more points.
Sure, no question about that. Had a little bit of life with Mason Rudolph, but they were the lowest scoring playoff team since I think the 2018 or 2016 Texans. You got to score points in this league. They don't do it.
Cameron Andrews writes in, good morning, Dave and Alex. Thank you again for all that you do. It's a long season with many ups and downs, typically Steelers seasons, but you two were consistent as always. I know many people will blame Tomlin for the slow start, but he says, I can't. The turnovers early and miscommunication is on the players. They needed to execute better. My only issue was with Tomlin was at the end of the first half, the clock management situation. Other than that, I thought he coached a good game. He says, what do you think about the end of the first half?
Oh, yeah.
Clock situation, which I did find curious.
I meant to talk about that, and we kind of did like the old school chronological order recap of the game, so I kind of lost my place there. It was very either call the timeout immediately or don't call it at all. It really felt like Pittsburgh's coaching staff, Tomlin included, did not realize the situation, and then somebody alerted him with 2 seconds left, and they went, "Oh, we got to call the timeout," which is irrelevant at that point. It's second down. They just take a knee in the end of half. So, if you wanted to argue why you shouldn't call the timeout, you could sit there and say, "What if the Bills hit a big play and you give up something late?" But when they got a bum punter out there, you know what his hamstring situation was like. I think you have to be aggressive, call the timeout. But either do it immediately or don't do it at all with 2 seconds left. It's like, What are you even trying? I kind of felt like there was chaos on Pittsburgh sideline. They did not realize the situation until there were 2 seconds left.
If anything, at 2 seconds, calling it 2 seconds left, you're giving them a chance to do one of them. The band is on the field.
That's true. What yard line was Buffalo at that point? End of the half there. They were at their 32.
And it was like a second down and long,
17.
wasn't it?
Yeah, second. Because Golden sacked him with like 47 seconds left. It would have been 2nd and 17. Pittsburgh had all 3 timeouts, and then they took one with 2 seconds left.
Yeah, that didn't make a lot of sense there. What is your take about some of the young players in the game? He said, I liked Robinson's tackling, and I thought Austin stepped up when Robinson left. I think they don't believe in Mark Robinson. Like whatever you want about Mark Robinson. The only reason he played the snaps that he played this season was because of the injuries and all.
And even then, he was pretty limited to some base packages. Yeah, right. He was downhill. He had that one great stick that held Buffalo short of the marker, but he has not earned their trust, and that seems to be the issue with him from a above the neck communication standpoint. Problems.
I think it was good for Cameron to point out what Austin did after Robinson left. I thought we saw a couple of nice things in there with him. He says I didn't hear or see much of Benton. He thought JPJ was good besides on the broken plays. He says he thought George Pickens had an up and down game. The fumble and the drop TD in the end zone was low and costly, he says, but he made plays throughout the game. Look, they, say what you want about all the young guys on this team last night. It wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, again, the spot Pittsburgh's in, there's talent. They're not gonna tear this thing down to the studs and hit the reset button. That was kind of done 2 years ago when they kind of rebuilt this offense and had that really young group in 21. So there's talent, but you're missing your quarterback. You're missing some of the schematic type stuff, and your defense is got to get faster on defense. I know injuries played a factor, but this is a slow defense, Dave. I mean, you watch Josh Allen just run laps around, down that 52-yard touchdown run. They got to get some team speed. Minka's got a little bit of speed. Porter can run. Other than that, they are a slow group. And even the guys that are hurt, Holcomb off the knee injury, how fast will he be? That kind of stuff. They got to get faster.
Let's see. He goes on to say a couple of things that he thought was bush league about the JPJ injury, some of the questionable flags thrown, Mason sliding and not getting hit. No flag for that, but Josh Allen. Look, we got plenty of time to commiserate about, calls in that game and non-calls. What'd you think about the fake slide?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I've had this has kind of been my bucket of like lateral based offense idea. If I'm a quarterback, I'm going to, constantly pretend like I'm going to go out of bounds. Oh, don't hurt me, guys. I'm just kind of jogging here. And then I run really fast to get an extra 3 yards, like that kind of stuff. Just use the rules to my advantage because nobody wants to touch a quarterback and potentially get called for it with the way that they're protected. So I think Allen just does kind of the smart things and exploits the extra protection quarterbacks get.
David Beerley writes in, thanks for all your great work. I know you usually don't like to say what you would do, but what changes this offseason would you like to see happen? I still think Tomlin is the right man for the job, he says, but other major changes need to happen, like a new offensive staff or of outside hires and maybe even a new DC, as well as getting aggressive in free agency and not being complacent. What do you guys think? Devin, we got a lot of time to talk about this, a lot of time. I mean, look, first and foremost, like to see, if indeed Mike Tomlin comes back, like to see the offensive coaching staff changed up there. I mean, we can have arguments about the defensive coordinator there. The fact of the matter is they, like Alex just said, they need speed on this defense.
Yeah, they got to get an upgrade there. There's no doubt about that.
So, I mean, we're going to have a lot of these talks, Devin. I appreciate the email. Nick Shuley writes in, the Steelers have been outscored 66-0 in the first quarter of their last 5 playoff games. The lack of fundamental ball security and 6 penalties says to me that Mike Tomlin players coach mentality enables guys to play sloppy, undisciplined football. He says this team will continue to be in purgatory until they part ways with him. He says it's now been 7 years since they've won a playoff game. He says it's saddening to see Tomlin take the stand of when the Steelers were once feared to them being mediocre and feared by no one. There's no way they can give him an extension after this. He says, I thank you guys for all the content. Dave, also, I recently got into CCR. Man, what a great band. Are you a fan? Yeah, I grew up with Creedence Clearwater Revival, always played. There was some things I always remember playing in the house as a young kid as far as music goes. Elvis Presley, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Tom Jones. My mom was a big Tom Jones fan. What else? Led Zeppelin. I remember Led Zeppelin being played in the house at a young age. There. Outside of that, I mean, various country music. Glenn Campbell, Ronnie Millsap, Charlie Rich. That's my memories, but yeah, I can listen to Creedence Clearwater Revival. Thanks for the email, Nick. What about you? What you got any memories from music as a kid, Alex? Anything playing in the house?
Yeah, mom, big Elvis fan, like huge Elvis fan. So a lot of that probably dominated my early days.
Yeah, I love, to this day, I still listen to Elvis for obvious reasons. Oh, Beatles, a lot of Beatles in the house growing up. Kevin writes in recent weeks, they have been two main points suggesting that Kenny will be the guy, quote unquote, football justice, and Kenny is Coach Tomlin's guy. And those are good points, but don't they apply equally well to Mason, at least from the outside? We have at best secondhand info on training, etc. I still remember Dave commenting on Coach's glee at the first working out of Mason during the pre-draft period, and we certainly can't argue with his professionalism nor his strength in the face of dual adversities this season. A horrible 3-game losing streak and being down 3 touchdowns. He says, I don't know who will ultimately be the better quarterback, nor whether either can become the franchise guy, but I certainly think Mason has earned an equal chance to fight for that starting job. Thanks you guys for the excellent work. Kevin, good points there, but here's one of the key points. Mason's not under contract next season. That's something that this team, that's a big obstacle right there.
Yeah. And we don't know what his future is going to be. Don't know what his market's going to be. I assume it'll be more than what it was this past year, which was essentially nothing. I will say also, I think he's earned himself some money. The strength of the quarterback class may cap his value a bit. I think one reason why Mitch Trubisky was viewed as, even though he kind of wasn't that hot commodity, was that draft class was viewed as really poor. In this class, you're going to have May and Williams and Daniels and Penix and other guys I'm sure are missing right now. And you're going to have a bunch of, blue chip type of quarterback prospects, and that may decrease the value of the free agency class.
Yeah, I would agree. So maybe Rudolph's value comes in even lower than maybe what we think,
But it's hard to peg. It just takes one team that likes him.
Sure.
So I don't know.
Zach Watt writes in, hey, Dave and Alex, unfortunate into the season, but at no point did we look like the better team, sans that brief moment in the second half of the game. My question is, can we expect Art Rooney to make a statement about the direction of the team and what his expectations for the team will be as we move forward into the offseason? Peace and love, Zach. Yeah, Zach, usually the end of from this point until the end of January is when the Rooney bat signal goes up there. And look, obviously you got the what's the date of the Senior Bowl, Alex?
It's always last week of January into that first week of February, so 2 weeks basically.
Yeah, we're going to get some, we'll get our answers, I think, about Tomlin here pretty quick, and then we'll have the Rooney press conference and what he'd like to see moving forward. And usually you can take a piece or two of that out and rubber stamp it to maybe what you think will be in the draft and, to some degree free agency, but that's coming here, Zach.
This just goes back to just quickly, our conversation, but will they stick with Kenny Pickett? And if they stick with Pickett, as we think that they will, it becomes, okay, Operation Save Kenny Pickett. That's going to become their offseason motto.
Yeah. I think that's the way they're going.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't have any reason right now to think otherwise.
I agree.
One more here. Let's take one from Nathan Casey here. How is the obvious fake slide by Allen not called as a penalty? In this era of protecting the quarterback, in my opinion, that was clearly a move to make the defender think he was going to slide. There needs to be a rule in place, and all TDs are reviewable, and it should come back to the spot of the foul, then tack the penalty yards on, making a mockery of the rule made to protect runners. Also, the horrifically unsafe blindside lineman hit to the back of the head of Joey Porter Jr. should have been called and would have negated that huge play by Buffalo. That isn't necessarily the reason they lost, he says, but I'm not sure it couldn't go different. It couldn't go differently with those two penalties, not even mentioning the illegal holding on a moonshot out of bounds there. Look, point taken. If these quarterbacks want to be protected, then they're but it's such a subjective call too, right?
Well, just to be clear, the fake slide is not illegal in the NFL. So if you want it to be illegal, that's fine. But for that to happen, you have to kind of get burnt. Kenny Pickett's touchdown against Wake Forest stood, and then they made it, illegal after the fact. So somebody has to make that play for it to actually come into purview and into conversation. But it is not illegal. You can fake slide all day long in the NFL. It is 100% legal. And
then even if you made it a rule, there's a level of subjectivity to it.
Yeah. 100%. What is a fake slide? What does constitute a slide?
I mean we have trouble figuring out what is a catch.
Yeah, 100%. So right now you can be mad and that's fine. But what Allen did is 100% legal. So what are you going to do about it?
And with a guy of his size, like Alex put it best, he does a great job of stretching it, stretching the rules as best as he can. All right. We have a lot of time for a lot of angry emails moving forward here. I think Alex and I might try to tackle another one on Wednesday morning.
Yeah, we'll stay in routine. We'll do maybe a short show, maybe go through free agency a bit more. Maybe the all 22 will come out. So we'll come back tomorrow and talk about this some more and go from there.
All right. We'll move forward into the off season here. A lot of good content coming on SteelersDepot.com. We will shift immediately to off season mode. All the usual things that you'd look for within that. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. If you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. We certainly do appreciate, take a moment here, all the support for the site, for the podcast. Shout out to all of our contributors on the site. Just absolutely phenomenal season. We appreciate all the support that you give us. We don't take it lightly. We try to do what we do with every post and every podcast and every terrible take and just everything. We try to do it as balanced and as objectively as we possibly can as a group, with still having some semblance of being fans mixed in this. We're not perfect in any sense of the imagination here. We just, especially Alex and I specifically, we're just two guys that like to talk Steelers football and football in general, and hopefully that shows through with everything that we do. So we don't know what the plans are for you are moving forward. Some will like to take a little time off and maybe not listen and not read the site. That's fine to do. We do ask that, hopefully that, you do stick with us as much as you can through the off season here. But more than anything, Alex and I would just like to say thank you to everybody listening and reading, and thank you to our staff as well. Anything else to add, Alex?
No, it's a great sentiment, Dave. I echo it completely. It's always a long year, and right. You're right. I think you said it so well earlier. Like the NFL can be so strange, and sports in general. Like you're in season. 24 hours ago, we're talking about they're going to go to Baltimore, win this game, pull off the upside, and now it's just over, just done. Just it's a light switch, turns on and off, and now things are. We won't see this team play again until the preseason. So weird adjustment, but we thank everybody for following. We thank our team that worked so hard from training camp to now is a long time, and they put in a ton of work, and we really appreciate that. But we're still here. We're still going to talk about this team, do breakdowns and columns and all what we do at Steelers Depot. So hopefully you guys stick with us.
And Alex, you do a great job. I mean, I'm blessed. I wake up, every morning, get to work with you. That's a blessing. Get to talk to you 3 times a week for up to about around 2 hours sometimes, and I still get a joy out of that. So I appreciate you. So
yeah, you as well, Dave.
With that, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.